We all know the Earth is actually... Okay, nah, we're not doing that. What? Yeah, we're doing this? For real? Why do I have to be that guy? What is beyond the ice wall of Antarctica? Disclaimer, obviously a theory and should be considered for entertainment purposes only. Yes, this is the ridiculous Earth plane theory, or at least a part of it. Now, personally, I think this map is complete bullcrap. There's just countless evidence that goes against it. Before ever even considering a theory, you always need to look for some sort of tangible proof. And these mysterious blue shards reported in a leak from Antarctic research labs are a little more revealing. They were leaked by this helicopter engineer who was contracted to work at McMurdo Station in Antarctica from 1997 to the year 2000. And if you don't know, McMurdo Station is usually where shit goes down. So this engineer, let's call him Jimmy Boy, claimed that he befriended a few of the scientists doing research there in 1998. The scientists told him that they had two types of ice they worked with down there. There was this ice that they drilled cores out of boreholes in the ground that was cold to the touch, usually clear or some shade of white, and melted into water. Almost all of Antarctica is covered with this type of ice, which is just normal ice. Clearly, this wasn't their main focus of research. The only times they ever actively study this ice is when film crews from like National Geographic came down to film a documentary. The other 95% of the time, they studied the forbidden sky ice, totally different than the ice that we're used to. Jimmy wasn't allowed in the labs where they studied sky ice because it was, you know, super duper top secret. But one time, one of the scientists he got close with showed him a piece of the ice, and it was unlike any other matter he's ever seen on Earth. First of all, you couldn't touch it with your bare hands and had to wear your heavy-duty South Pole exploration gloves when holding it because of how cold it was. Secondly, as you can tell, it was this solid deep blue color, allegedly composed mainly of oxygen, and is why they called it sky ice. And oh man, I haven't even scratched the surface of how deep this goes. Oxygen has a freezing point of about negative 218 degrees Celsius, which is when it turns into a solid, so you'd practically get frostbite just by looking at it. Jimmy held it for a bit with his gloves, of course, noting that it was lighter than regular ice, almost like he could have thrown it up in the air and it would have floated back down. It was also slightly flexible and completely opaque, so you couldn't see through it at all. And it didn't even melt into water when it got warm, but just continually shrank until it ceased to exist, likely turning directly into oxygen gas, which is why they had to study it in Antarctica. They couldn't even transport it to anywhere in the world before it disappeared. The Russians knew about this too, and it's part of the reason they all have research stations down there. After 15 minutes or so, the sky ice was almost completely gone, and Jimmy asks his research friend where they even get this ice from. And this is where it gets interesting, because to that, the scientist replied, they get it from the wall. According to him, if you go deep enough, hundreds of kilometers inland from the coast, you'll run into a huge wall in Antarctica that contains this sky ice, the biggest natural structure in the world. This sounds a lot like the infamous ice wall from the pancake Earth theory, which states there's a giant wall of ice that surrounds our entire planet, and there's even more land beyond this wall if you somehow manage to get past it, including the legendary lands of Atlantis, Mu, the Garden of Eden, and even Asgard. Obviously just an incredible stretch of a theory, but interesting to see the ice wall mentioned in a scientific setting here. Now, buckle in, cause this is where it actually gets insane, in case you felt like it wasn't already. The US has known about this sky ice for decades, and back in the 60s, they actually tried boring a tunnel through the ice wall. They built a special boring machine made for the super cold temperatures of the sky ice wall and started digging. For the first 2 miles or so, the floor was solid rock, but after that, even the ground under them became the bright blue sky ice, until they got about 5 to 10 miles deep after an entire year of boring, which is pretty damn far and still no sight of the other side. When they realized the tunnel was shrinking and eventually got so small that they could barely even move their machine anymore. Turns out sky ice, when exposed to warmer temperatures, just dissipates into thin air, but in colder temperatures, like inside the tunnel, it regenerates itself. Eventually, the tunnel got so tight, it became too difficult to continue boring, so they scrapped the project, ditched the machine, and after many decades, the hole they dug into the wall has now been completely sealed. Now, some people say this sky ice wall sounds almost exactly like what would be called the dome or the firmament in the horizontal Earth, or at least fragments of it, and even the most popular book in the world had something to say about it. Ezekiel 1:26 reads, "And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone." Now, whether you believe in the Bible or not, we can all agree it is by definition a historic text. Text that was written sometime in history. Firmament over their heads, appearance of a sapphire stone. I mean, I really don't want to believe this is true, and who knows, maybe this entire sky ice Antarctica story is just completely made up, but as always, what if?